The God of 18s, a mythical being belonging in the same pantheon as the God of Whiteness, Eskimosian, from a few videos back. He blesses players with perfect 18s during character creation and completely, totally exists. If you ask my player, who we shall call 64. But wait, 64 was his character, what's the player's name? I think you're lying to us, you didn't even play D&D, you're making this up, you faggot. 64 was an interesting character, but his player was by far the more interesting. Whenever rolling a new character, he would actively pray to the God of 18s, 18 being the highest stat your character could roll to start. We thought it was a joke until he had a hymn. Whenever he rolled an 18, he blamed the god. Whenever he rolled not an 18, he blamed me. Because yes, that's how that works. I make your rolls. The fucking DM makes that goddamn roll shit. That's completely how it fucking... 64 had some habits as well when it came to the dice. We had one of those giant red d20s. In fact, it was the giant d20 that Elros from the last video made all the crits with. So 64 one day realized that he needed to build an emotional connection with his dice, bond with them, feel them inside of him, rent a hotel room, pound the dice until the sweet dawn takes him to places mankind has never been. And one day he chose the giant d20 to be his lucky die. To break in the d20, he had to fit it inside of his mouth. Now keep in mind, this thing was about as large as the average Irishman's ego after a steady night of drinking. 64 unhinged his mouth like a goddamn snake and stuffed this thing into it. It was hilarious once, but then it became a daily ritual. Now keep in mind, dearest viewer, that the die was not his. He would just take someone else's die, stuff it in his mouth, and roll it across the floor like a fucking animal, all in the hopes of making better rolls by invoking the God of 18s. And the worst, and I mean the worst part of all of it is, it worked. Players argue in D&D. In a lot of the groups I've been in, it was over rules. In my main group, we've always had the idea that rules can be bent, changed, or ignored to create the most fun situation possible. Arguments in my main group were always about the role-playing element, since as I've said, we were pretty role-playing intensive. Allow me to give some background to this specific argument. So this little boy, the little boy who had just lost his family and nearly his entire village to the demons, was given the feather from the wings of an angel. This feather had a tiny effect that would prevent one level 1 spell cast on the boy, but otherwise filled him with hope that he'd be okay and be able to get back to civilization. Kobe, because of course it was Kobe, actually decided to argue with the player Newman, the player who gave the boy the feather. Kobe's argument was that the feather would actually give the boy so much hope, he'd think he could do anything and get killed by being a fool. Newman and Kobe argued for a solid half hour, getting increasingly heated, before eventually other players had to calm them down and they agreed to move on. Later on down the road, Kobe joined the main villain, because of course he did, and came back to literally blow up the city by sending hundreds of magic missiles down on the party with his newfound evil power just to prove a fucking point. The boy's feather protected the very first magic missile, so Kobe went completely berserk until the child died. It was pretty fucked. One of our campaigns, the longest lasting one, was set up on the idea that players were taken to a fantasy world where they had the souls of heroes inside of them. They had to go out and learn their own abilities. It's lasted for 3 years now and is ongoing. Newman decided to become a druid. While he began his druid studies, he began mass producing and collecting hair ties for part of a plot that will definitely be a story later. Well, one day, while on his druid training, he wandered the forest where he came across a savage goblin tribe. They wanted to attack him. Newman, being completely defenseless against an entire tribe at such a low level, had to find a way out of it. He knew he couldn't outrun their spears and bows, so he pulled the hair ties out of his pocket and after a few charisma checks, began a salesman routine, trying to sell them hair ties and brushes. He taught the entire colony of goblins how to care for their unwieldy hair. Over time in the campaign, the goblins eventually built a totem for him as he helped them out more and more with their fucking hygienics, for teaching them how to be more civilized and giving them the hair ties. The goblins slowly started worshipping him as he benefited their tribe more and more, before ultimately pledging themselves to him and his friends and helping them in a battle. They were all promptly killed. To any DM watching this, I honestly cannot emphasize enough, you need to push your role-playing. Your groups will be able to come up with some of the most interesting stories ever. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Every time you like this video, the God of 18s will actually come down and present you with a golden 18.